They spent a lifetime side by side, building careers, raising a family, and becoming one of the most cherished couples in American entertainment. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans seemed to embody resilience and faith through every high and low. Yet nothing could prepare them, or their fans, for the painful final chapter that awaited them. As their legendary story reached its end, a series of devastating moments unfolded that transformed their love story into something far more tragic than anyone expected. What happened in those final years reveals a haunting and emotional ending that still echoes through Hollywood history today. Before he became Roy Rogers, before the world knew him as the king of the cowboys, Roy Rogers was simply Leonard Franklin Sly, born on November 5, 1911, in Cincinnati, Ohio. He grew up with his parents, Mattie and Andy, and his three sisters, Kathleen, Mary, and Cleda, in a modest tenement on 2nd Street. It wasn't much, but even as a kid, Leonard had a sharp sense of humor. Years later, when Riverfront Stadium was built on that very spot, he liked to say he'd been born at second base. Behind the jokes, though, life was anything but easy. By 1912, Leonard's father and uncle decided city life wasn't for them. Using salvaged wood, they built a houseboat from scratch. That July, the entire family climbed aboard and set off down the Ohio River, chasing a simpler life. What they found instead was just how unforgiving that life could be. They eventually docked in Portsmouth, Ohio, hoping to finally settle down. But in 1913, the Great Flood tore through the region and wiped out any sense of stability they had managed to build. Still, giving up wasn't in the family's nature. In a preview of the frugality Rogers would later become known for, they hauled the houseboat onto dry land and turned it into a permanent home. The rest of Leonard's childhood offered no shortcuts to comfort. By 1919, the family moved to Duck Run, near Lucasville, Ohio, where they built a 6-room farmhouse deep in the countryside. Remote didn't even begin to cover it. Rogers later joked they lived so far out that they had to pipe sunlight in. Isolated as it was, that farm became the place where his work ethic was forged, and his talents quietly began to grow. Life there meant constant labor. Leonard watched his mother, who lived with a physical disability, somehow manage 4 energetic children day in and day out. He admired his father just as much, especially when Andy took extra factory shifts in the city during the week just to keep food on the table. It was a tough upbringing, but it came with moments that would shape his future in ways no one could have predicted. On weekends, Leonard's father returned home from the factory, often bringing small surprises for the kids. One weekend, he brought something unforgettable, a horse. That single gift marked Leonard's first real connection to horsemanship, a bond that would define his public image years later. Entertainment was scarce in such a remote place. The family didn't own a radio, so if they wanted music or fun, they had to create it themselves. Saturday nights turned their farmhouse into a gathering spot for neighbors. Square dances filled the rooms, and Leonard wasn't just along for the ride. He sang, played the mandolin, and even called the dances, learning how to command attention without ever realizing he was doing it. That skill came in handy elsewhere too. On a sprawling farm, shouting across acres of land was often the only way to communicate. Long before microphones or amplifiers, Leonard learned to project his voice. He listened endlessly to a cylinder recording of Swiss yodelers, practicing until he and his family developed their own way of calling out across the fields. What started as a practical solution slowly became a lifelong love of music. Then the Great Depression hit, and the stakes rose fast. Leonard knew he had to help his family survive. He left school and joined his father at the Portsmouth shoe factory, working long, exhausting hours. Still, he wasn't ready to give up on learning. He enrolled in night classes, pushing himself to keep going, even when his body had nothing left to give. One night changed everything. After a brutal shift, Leonard fell asleep during class. When he woke up, he wasn't met with understanding. He was met with laughter. Humiliated and worn down, he walked away from formal education for good. It felt like an ending, but in reality, it was a turning point. In 1929, Leonard and his father took a leap and headed west to California, chasing the promise of opportunity. He stayed briefly with his sister before returning to Ohio, but he came back with something important, a sense that his future was somewhere else. California had planted a seed. Not long after, that pull became impossible to ignore. Leonard returned west again, this time traveling with his sister Mary's father-in-law. By 1930, the family reunited in California, renting a small house and finding work on a road construction crew. For a moment, it felt like things were finally stabilizing. Then, reality hit again. By 1931, construction work dried up, forcing Leonard to head to Tulare, California to pick peaches. He lived in a Depression-era labor camp, grinding through backbreaking work for barely enough pay to survive. Still, he refused to let the struggle harden him. Even at his lowest, he believed something better was coming. That belief paid off sooner than expected. After returning to California, his sister Mary suggested something that felt almost impossible. She told her shy 19-year-old brother to audition for a radio show called Midnight Frolic. Up to that point, Leonard had only ever performed for family and neighbors. The idea of a live broadcast was terrifying. Mary didn't just suggest it, she made it happen. She helped him find the courage to step forward and even sewed him a custom Western shirt to wear on the air. That small act of belief pushed him over the edge he couldn't cross alone. When Leonard finally performed, his guitar playing, singing, and yodeling landed exactly where they needed to. Within days, a local country group called the Rocky Mountaineers offered him a paid position. For the first time, music wasn't just passion, it was a path. He joined the band immediately, but Leonard wasn't interested in hogging the spotlight. He wanted collaboration. Soon after, he placed an ad in the local paper looking for a yodeler to join an old-time act. The man who answered that ad was a young unknown singer named Bob Nolan. Leonard hired Nolan on the spot. Though Nolan's time with the Rocky Mountaineers was brief, the friendship between the two men lasted a lifetime and would eventually help reshape country music itself. Inspired by Nolan's boldness, Leonard left the Rocky Mountaineers in early 1932. He teamed up with fellow band member Slumber Nichols to form a new group, but it collapsed almost as quickly as it formed. What followed was one of the hardest stretches of his life. Certain he belonged in music, but unsure where he fit, Leonard drifted from group to group: the International Cowboys, the O-Bar-O Cowboys, his Texas Outlaws, living like a musical nomad. Through all the instability, one thing stayed constant: his presence on the radio. And it was during one of those radio performances, seemingly just another stop along the way, that fate quietly stepped in, setting the stage for a turning point that would change both his career and his personal life forever. The turning point before Dale. While Roy Rogers struggled to lock down a steady band in those early years, his luck in romance told a very different story. In fact, it bordered on unbelievable. During a tour stop with the O-Bar-O Cowboys in Roswell, New Mexico, an unusual call came into the radio station. On the line was a woman named Grace Arlene Wilkins, and she had a proposition. If Roy would sing her favorite song, the Swiss Yodel, she promised to return the favor with her own special talent, baking. Roy didn't hesitate. He sang the song live on the air, and by the time he finished, it was clear something had clicked. Grace was charmed, and as it turned out, her pies were just as impressive as his yodeling. What began as a light-hearted radio moment quickly turned into something real. The two stayed in touch, and before long, that long-distance connection turned into a full-blown romance. In June of 1936, they were married in Roswell, the same town where their story had begun over the airwaves. By all accounts, their marriage was steady and deeply supportive. Grace stood by Roy through the lean years, when success was uncertain and money was tight. By 1941, things had improved enough that they felt ready to grow their family. They adopted a baby girl, Cheryl Darlene, and for a time, life felt balanced. Later, Grace gave birth to their daughter, Linda Lou, followed by a son, Roy Jr., known as Dusty, in 1946. It should have been the happiest moment of Roy's life. Instead, it became the most devastating. Just days after Dusty's birth, Grace died from complications related to childbirth. In an instant, Roy was left a widower with 3 young children. His world collapsed, but the demands of his rising career didn't pause. He had to carry unimaginable grief while continuing to move forward in the public eye. Years earlier, back in 1933, Roy had joined forces with Bob Nolan and Tim Spencer to form a new vocal group called the Pioneers Trio. The setup was tight: Roy on guitar, Nolan on bass, Spencer leading vocals. They rehearsed relentlessly, chasing perfect harmony. There was only one issue. A radio announcer jokingly pointed out that the group looked far too young to be pioneers. The comment stuck. Taking the hint, they renamed themselves the Sons of the Pioneers. And that small change made a big difference. By mid-1934, the Sons of the Pioneers were everywhere. Their radio performances were so popular in Los Angeles that stations began syndicating them nationwide. Before long, their sound was reaching listeners across the country, and the next step came quickly. The group landed a major recording deal, and between 1934 and 1936, they recorded 32 songs for Decca Records. Among them were timeless classics like Tumbling Tumbleweeds and Cool Water. Everything was lining up perfectly until Roy's career took an unexpected turn. By 1935, it was obvious that radio alone couldn't contain him. He made the move into Western films, initially appearing under his birth name, Leonard Sly. At first, he was just another singing cowboy in the background, unaware that something much bigger was coming. That moment arrived in 1938. At the time, Gene Autry ruled the Western box office. But when Autry demanded a major pay raise during casting for Under Western Stars, the studio balked. Instead of giving in, they began searching for a replacement. Suddenly, every country singer in the West showed up to audition. Even performers with screen experience thought they had a shot. On paper, Leonard Sly didn't stand out, but the moment he sang, studio executives realized they had found something rare. He had the voice, the presence, and the authenticity. They just needed to package it right. The biggest change came down to his name. Republic Pictures wanted something that felt iconic. They chose Rogers in tribute to beloved humorist Will Rogers, whose name still carried warmth and trust with audiences. For his first name, they picked Roy, inspired by the French word for king. With that, Leonard Sly became Roy Rogers, King of the Cowboys. Every king needs a loyal companion, and Roy found his in Under Western Stars. The horse was a golden palomino named Trigger, previously known as Golden Cloud, and already experienced in Hollywood. From the moment Roy rode him, the connection was undeniable. Roy purchased Trigger for $2,500, a significant sum at the time, but one that proved priceless. From that point on, Roy rode no other horse. Trigger appeared in every film and television show alongside him, earning a reputation as the smartest horse in movies. Trigger became such a star that he often received second billing in the credits, sometimes even ahead of Roy's wife and frequent co-star Dale Evans. Trigger remained by Roy's side until his death in 1965 at the age of 33. Under Western Stars was meant to be just another Western. Instead, it launched an icon. Roy Rogers quickly became a matinee idol, challenging Gene Autry's dominance at the box office. By 1939, industry polls revealed a shocking shift. Roy had overtaken Autry as the top moneymaker. He didn't just win once. Roy topped box office rankings year after year from 1943 to 1954 and remained in the top 10 for 16 consecutive years. What set Roy apart wasn't just popularity, it was business savvy. While most actors surrendered merchandising profits to the studios, Roy negotiated control over his name, image, and likeness. Republic Pictures agreed, underestimating the value of that decision. Roy capitalized immediately. His brand expanded into toys, books, comics, play sets, and more. At his peak, the only entertainment figure outselling him in retail was Walt Disney. Roy Rogers wasn't just a movie star, he was a full-scale empire. And while his professional life soared, fate was quietly setting up another personal turning point. In 1944, during the filming of Cowboy and the Senorita, Roy met a woman named Dale Evans. Neither of them knew it yet, but their partnership would become one of the most enduring and beloved pairings in entertainment history. A marriage tested by tragedy. When Roy Rogers lost his first wife, Arlene Wilkins, in 1946, the loss cut deep. He was shattered, left to grieve while raising 3 young children and carrying the weight of a rapidly growing career. It was one of the darkest periods of his life. What Roy couldn't see at the time was that the person who would help him find his way forward was already standing beside him. In the months that followed Arlene's death, Roy and Dale Evans discovered that their bond went far beyond shared screen time. What had started as professional chemistry slowly turned into something much more personal. love crept in quietly, and once Roy realized it, he didn't hesitate for long. In 1947, the two were appearing at a rodeo in Chicago Stadium. The crowd came for the usual dust, danger, and excitement, but Roy had planned a moment no one would ever forget. Sitting high in the saddle on Trigger, his trusted horse, Roy turned to Dale and proposed, right there, in front of thousands of stunned spectators. It was bold, public, and unmistakably Roy Rogers. For a proposal that dramatic, an ordinary wedding simply wouldn't do. The couple chose the Flying L Ranch in Oklahoma, where they had previously filmed Home in Oklahoma, as the place to begin their life together. On New Year's Eve, surrounded by celebration and excitement, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans were married. It wasn't just a wedding, it marked the beginning of one of Hollywood's most iconic partnerships. That marriage didn't just change their personal lives, it supercharged their careers. Almost overnight, their popularity doubled. Together, they became more than movie stars. They were the most recognizable couple in Western entertainment. In truth, Roy and Dale had been a team long before they married. Their partnership began in 1944 with Cowboy and the Señorita, and from that point on, audiences rarely saw one without the other. Between 1944 and 1951, they appeared together in nearly 30 films, wrapping up that run with Pals of the Golden West. Those movies didn't just entertain, they defined an era and locked both of them into Western film history. A big reason their films worked so well was authenticity. Roy insisted on doing his own stunts, no matter how risky they were. He built a reputation in Hollywood as someone who didn't fake danger. That fearlessness thrilled audiences, but it also pushed him closer to the edge, and he sometimes realized. Then came a major turning point in 1951. Roy's contract with Republic Pictures expired, and instead of renewing it, he walked away. The decision shocked the industry, but Roy wasn't stepping back. He was stepping forward. Just 1 month after his final Republic film, The Roy Rogers Show premiered on television. From 1951 to 1957, Roy and Dale dominated the small screen, starring in 100 episodes of the show. It became a massive hit because it blended classic Western values with a modern setting, something few shows had attempted. According to author Raymond White, many episodes went beyond action, focusing on moral lessons and often reflecting Christian themes that resonated deeply with audiences. Behind the scenes, though, things weren't always smooth. Despite the show's success, Roy often clashed with the producer, whom he felt was cutting corners. Used to major box office paydays, Roy believed he was being underpaid for a show that carried his name and image. The frustration wasn't just about pride. Roy had real responsibilities. He and Dale truly lived the idea that partners should work together and build together. Over the course of their 50-year marriage, they had 1 biological child and adopted 4 more. To the public, they looked like the perfect all-American family. But behind the smiles and saddle shots, their life together was marked by repeated loss, emotional strain, and challenges that tested their faith and resilience. Hardships that would quietly shape the next chapter of their story. In 1950, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans welcomed their first biological child together, a baby girl they named Robin. For a brief moment, life felt full of promise. That joy, however, was almost immediately tempered by devastating news from the doctors. Robin had been born with a serious heart defect and Down syndrome. Even more shocking than the diagnosis was the advice that followed. According to their eldest daughter, Cheryl, doctors urged Roy and Dale to place Robin in an institution and never visit her. They claimed she would never recognize her parents and suggested it would be easier for everyone to simply let her go. Roy and Dale refused. They believed Robin had been entrusted to them for a reason, and no medical opinion was going to change that. They brought her home and committed themselves fully to loving and caring for her. At first, Dale kept Robin's condition private. She feared the public reaction and the harsh stigma surrounding children with special needs at the time. Doctors continued to pressure her, insisting that caring for Robin would take too much attention away from the rest of the family. Dale stood firm. She wanted her daughter to grow up surrounded by love, not isolation. Desperate for hope, the couple sought out specialist after specialist, but the answers never changed. In a final attempt to give Robin the best possible chance, they moved the family to the San Fernando Valley, believing the environment might improve her fragile health. It wasn't enough. Just before her second birthday, Robin contracted the mumps. Her small body couldn't withstand the illness, and she passed away from complications. For Roy and Dale, the loss was unbearable. The king of the cowboys and his wife were left heartbroken, facing a grief that would never fully fade. That tragedy was not something they ever truly recovered from. Decades later, the pain still lingered. Dale eventually poured her emotions into a book titled Angel Unaware, using words to process a loss that had reshaped their lives forever. Through it all, their other children became a source of strength. Beyond Robin, Roy and Dale adopted several children, each with a story marked by circumstance and compassion. They adopted 3 girls, Mimi, Dodie, and Debbie, and 1 boy, Sandy. Mimi entered their lives after they met her while traveling in Scotland and invited her to spend Christmas with them. Debbie came into the family after losing her parents during the Korean War. Tragically, she would later die in a bus accident at just 12 years old. With their family continuing to grow, space became a necessity. Roy, a cowboy both on and off the screen, wanted a ranch that matched the life he believed in. Around 1955, he purchased a sprawling 300-acre ranch just outside Chatsworth, California. Perched on a hilltop, the ranch house looked like something pulled straight from one of his films. But even that peaceful setting couldn't shield the family from more loss. In 1964, tragedy struck again when Debbie was killed in a bus crash during a church outing. It was another crushing blow, adding to a long list of heartbreaks. After Debbie's death, Roy felt the family needed a fresh start. He relocated them to a 67-acre property in Apple Valley, California, known as the Double R Bar Ranch. By then, faith had become his main anchor, the one constant he could lean on when everything else felt uncertain. Professionally, The Roy Rogers Show came to an end in 1957. For most performers, that might have felt like a closing chapter. But Roy and Dale were far from finished. They had already made 29 films together, and they weren't ready to walk away from the spotlight just yet. In 1962, they launched a new television project, The Roy Rogers and Dale Evans Show. The concept leaned on what had worked before, blending Western themes, comedy, and variety. Expectations were high, but this time, the spark didn't catch. The show lasted only a few months before being canceled. The tragic ending and awful death of Roy Rogers and his wife. Throughout his career, Roy Rogers was open and unwavering about his Christian faith. In 1949, he and his wife, Dale Evans, joined the Hollywood Christian group. And for Roy, faith wasn't something he switched on and off. He carried it with him everywhere, including onto movie and television sets. And he never hesitated to let those values guide his decisions. That commitment became especially clear later in his career when he was scheduled to make a guest appearance on an episode of Wonder Woman titled The Bushwhackers. When Roy arrived on set, he was immediately uncomfortable with the show's modern visual style. Seeing Linda Carter in her superhero costume, he felt it crossed a line he wasn't willing to accept. To him, it was simply too revealing for the kind of image he believed in and the audience he represented. Roy refused to move forward with filming unless changes were made, and surprisingly, the production listened. The costume department reworked Carter's wardrobe, replacing the iconic outfit with a far more conservative look that included long sleeves and full-length pants. It was a rare moment in Hollywood where a guest star's personal convictions reshaped the final product. Christianity wasn't the only close-knit community Roy belonged to. He was also a lifelong Freemason and eventually reached the honorary 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite. Still, no matter how influential his circles became, he never lost his grounded small-town mindset. That humility showed itself in unexpected ways. As a lifelong Republican with massive cross-generational appeal, Roy eventually caught the attention of political leaders in Washington, D.C. The Republican National Convention even approached him about running for Congress, confident his popularity would all but guarantee a win. Roy declined, explaining that his fans came from all walks of life and all political beliefs, and he wasn't willing to divide them. That same loyalty extended to the people who helped him rise. Even after his solo career soared, Roy never left the Sons of the Pioneers behind. Though the group continued recording independently, Roy regularly brought them back as his backing band for films, television specials, and live performances. No matter how famous he became, he never forgot where he started. After a life filled with historic success, public admiration, and private heartbreak, Roy Rogers passed away from congestive heart failure at the age of 86. He was laid to rest at Sunset Hills Memorial Park in Apple Valley, California, with his family and his lifelong partner, Dale Evans, by his side. Roy's death devastated Dale in a way few could truly understand. Their bond had been the foundation of her life, and losing him left a void that never healed. Years earlier, in his autobiography, Happy Trails, Our Life Story, Roy had written openly about Dale's importance to him, calling her his guiding star and crediting her with helping him survive his darkest moments. Their love wasn't performative, it was lived. In her grief, Dale leaned heavily on their surviving children, who remained close and supportive during her final years. After all the loss she had endured, it seemed almost merciful that her remaining children would outlive her and go on to build meaningful lives of their own. Dale also found comfort in the legacy she had helped create. Beyond the Roy Rogers and Dale Evans Museum, her daughter Cheryl, whom the couple adopted in 1941, carried forward Dale's passion for helping children. Cheryl became a longtime charter member of Child Help USA, continuing the work her mother believed in so deeply. Still, even surrounded by family and purpose, Dale's heart remained broken. She spent the next 2.5 years mourning the man she had loved for more than half a century. On February 7, 2001, at the age of 88, she passed away. In a haunting twist of fate, Dale died from the same condition that had taken Roy, congestive heart failure. Today, they rest side by side, reunited at last. Though their lives were marked by both triumph and tragedy, the love they shared continues to stand as one of the most enduring and heartfelt stories in American entertainment history.